Welcome back. This is AP Environmental Science, Chapter 5. And in this video, we're going to talk about the pace of evolution and the factors determining the pace of evolution. And here we have 4 factors that determine the pace of evolution: the rate of environmental change, genetic variation, population size, and generation time. And so really these 4 graphs can explain it all, and so I actually recommend before your next test to be able to sketch out these simple graphs on your own in order to describe the ability of a species to adapt to environmental change. And so on the x-axis, that's what we have, the ability of a species to adapt to change, and then on the y-axis we have the different factors. And so the first factor in A, we have the rate of environmental change. And so a fast changing environment, as you see here, has a very low or a small ability to adapt to that change. Whereas a slow environmental change, rate of environmental change, provides the species enough time to change, and so it has a much greater ability to change with that slow-paced environment. So a slowly changing environment gives species more time to adapt to changes. So we want environmental change that is slow. And so that's why if you go in and you cut down the rainforest or divert a river and make a lake because of a dam or something, that's a very fast environmental change. And because it's a fast environmental change, the ability of a species to change is very low, as we see on the graph. But if it's a slow change over a long period of time, the ability of the species to change is much greater. Another factor determining pace of evolution is genetic variation. And so less genetic variation means there's less chance for the species to adapt to change. So as we see here, less genetic variation, very small chance there's less chance for the species to adapt to change. The more genetic variation, so high genetic variation, there's a greater chance for the species to adapt to change. So we want very high genetic variation, not low genetic variation. Population size. If we look at population size, if we have a very large population size, that means that we're going to have a very small or less ability of a species to adapt to a change. But if we have a small population size, we're going to have a much greater chance for or ability of a species to adapt to change. So the reason, these sort of conflict a little bit, these two right here, and so you have to think of population size in a sort of a weird way, but we know that if it's a small population size, that likely has less genetic variation, and that can be detrimental, and it would decrease the ability of a species to adapt to change. But in this case, a small population has the ability, if something beneficial happens, like a beneficial mutation occurs, it can spread much more rapidly than a large population. So population size, in this case, a small population has a greater ability to change, to adapt to any changes because of beneficial mutations. Generation time. So if you have a very long generation time, like an elephant, it has a very small ability to adapt to change. Whereas if you have a short generation time, like a fruit fly, you have a very high ability to adapt to change. So shorter generation times increase the chance that a species will change or adapt to that environmental change. So these 4 factors determine the pace of evolution, and so this is a very important diagram, you should be able to sketch these graphs, think about them and sketch them on your own. And be careful with these two right here in the middle, B and C, because they can be a little confusing.